Hi there, Christoph here. This is a re-recording of my talk, Building the Right Thing from BTC Prague 2024 at the Dev Hack Day on the design track. So this talk for me was about summarizing a whole lot of thoughts that I had, that I gathered around scaling. Scaling was really the starting point, and all kinds of considerations around it. What does it mean to scale? I heard the word scaling used a lot in conversations, but nobody ever actually defined it. Does it mean like 8 billion people? Isn't that a lot? Do we really need to reach everyone? Or then what does it mean? So let me just jump right into it. A lot of these are just all kinds of different thoughts, and then I try to kind of come up with a bit more of a framework in the end. But this is not final. This is an ongoing thing. I just wanted to share my thinking here and start conversations. So, something that I think happens a good amount in tech is that we come up with bicycle pairs. So I'll have this quote here. This is from an article called The Web's Grain by Frankie Mara. You should really read it. It's a great article. So it says here, it's very impressive that you can teach a bear to ride a bicycle, and it is fascinating and novel, but perhaps it's cruel because that's not what bears are supposed to do. And look, that bear will never actually be good at riding a bicycle. So let's replace bicycle with, let's say, ordinals and bear with Bitcoin. It's fascinating and novel that you can do this, but, it really bloats the UTXO set, and that's not really what it's meant to do, and it's never going to be really good at it. So I feel like with technology, not just in blockchains, and we a lot of times end up, with bicycle pairs, and, they're fun to look at, but it's not really, long term, maybe not the thing that we should put all of our emphasis on. So, but how do we find the things that we should focus on, right? That is the big question. So in the Bitcoin design community, we have the tagline, Design Bitcoin for Everyone. Does that mean scaling? Does it mean adoption? And when like I mentioned already, if I hear people use the word scaling on podcasts and conversations, I generally hear it used in two different ways. There are some people who say, well, and someone made this very clear to me, there's like Bitcoin scaling means allowing the technology to do more. It's like more transactions per second, more off-chain stuff, more, and undirected more, just make it able to do more. And then there's the people side. When I hear, let's say Anita Posh or so, for her, scaling means adoption, getting it more people to use it, specifically for the way they live their lives in their unique context, in their country, with their currency problems they might have, financial needs, and all of these things. So one is kind of, let's say, left to right or bottoms up technology. The other one is from the people side. And, ideally the sweet spot in the middle, that's kind of where it's worth building things. Well, of course you need the technology, of course you need to educate the people and bring them on board, but the software, really the good stuff is somewhere in the middle, where it goes really well with the technology. It's like a beautiful technological execution, and it greatly matches the actual needs people have and the way people think and all that. So let's get to numbers. When I first started thinking about trying to figure out what scaling means, of course, I heard, 8 billion people around the world, that's everyone. But there are only 5.92 billion adults. That means people over 15. Do kids younger than 15 need UTXOs? Does a 1-year-old need UTXO? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. And then we have 5.35 billion internet users. So those other 2.65 billion people, they can't even access the internet. Maybe that will change, but that kind of puts an upper limit on the type of scaling we would need. So 99% of the internet users are in high-income countries, 50% in low-income countries. Also a good stat to keep in mind. So let's say maximum is 5.35 billion internet users. Well, if we have a maximum, what's our minimum? And the way I think about minimum is if we have less than the minimum, maybe Bitcoin failed and it's just not useful, and maybe we need to give it up. So, and you can also put other restraints on this, like, does the minimum mean self-custody? So if we have 206, this is just a made up number, 5%, like if you have 270 million people in self-custody, does that mean Bitcoin succeeded even if more people are in ETFs and all this other stuff? Like, if we need to scale on-chain, for example, only, then what throughput or whatever do we need, right? And not having failed. And then the reality is probably somewhere in the middle. So, we're kind of cornering things in. The other thing is, like I already hinted, is what are we scaling? So self-sovereignty, inflation hedge, wealth building, economic activity. There's probably a bunch of other stuff, but can we break it down? So if you have an ETF, you don't really have the self-sovereignty. You do get the wealth building maybe and the inflation hedge. You can't really do economic activity. If you have wallet of Satoshi, you get the economic activity, but you don't get the self-sovereignty. If you're on eCash, like you can map different technologies or different ways of interacting with Bitcoin on these. And then you could also think about how that maps to world population and other things. Another number was the Lightning white paper that was quoted quite a few times in the last year, I think. So they basically said that simple math, they're 1 megabyte blocks, 2,000 transactions per megabyte, block every 10 minutes. That gives us 100 million transactions per year. And if a person does 3 transactions per year, that's 35 million users max, right? Not a lot. So then there are other numbers which are kind of, let's say, estimates of scaling. So Alex Bosworth, I think he posted, well, we could have 1 billion channel opens per year if we batch really well, like 50 at a time, and each batch costs $2 for the fees. So then you get, like, that's amazing, 1 billion channel opens per year. Then another number I heard, I think this was from Pete Wynn, which was, well, he thinks with on-chain optimizations, we could maybe get 6.5 times the transactions per year. That gives us 650 million transactions. That's pretty good. But then I also heard the number of, well, we might have $500 on-chain transaction fees. So, we do more, but then it also costs more. So the effective cost for actually doing things is might still go up, right? Or it might even stay the same. Now, the economic viability is also something that I thought about quite a bit. In the end, most of it just comes down to fees. Right? Is this worth it for me? I think this is the World Bank. They have these income categories for the world: low, lower middle, upper middle, high. You can see here on the left, person in the lower bracket, they earn a maximum of $1,135 per year. In the higher bracket, it's $13,845 or more. So it's annual income per person, and then you have these lower middle, upper middle. Left half is roughly 50%, right half is roughly 50%. The middle part, it's maybe 75% or so. You see the different countries down there. So that's kind of helpful, because now we can see, well, low income, what are their financial needs, and how do fees work out for them or don't work out for them. The extreme is Madagascar with $530 per year, and Swiss people on average earn 194 times more. So the fee with the global fee market, a fee can be 194 times more painful economically for one person than another, just because of where they live. So here's a little bit of fee math. So if you're in Switzerland and fees are $10, then that's 0.12% of your monthly income here. However, it is 22% if you live in Madagascar, or 5% in India. Now, at which point is this economically realistic? At which point is it better than your local financial system? The fees you pay for the bank or otherwise, right? That's some important stuff. And these are just made up numbers here with fees at the top, and no optimizations, nothing else. It's just very, very basic ways to rough things in. Banking the unbanked, something we love to. It's a big ambition, I would say. So we have 350 million unbanked across India and China, 40% of young adults in sub-Saharan Africa, 6% of population in Morocco. Maybe some of these countries you already know. A lot of them are in the low-income countries. So if you want to bank the unbanked, you have to tackle the countries with the lowest incomes, generally, I would say. And reasons for financial inclusions, that's a nice one too. Number one is cost, high fees, right? Just can't afford it. Then distance is the second part. We have that solved in Bitcoin. You just need that internet connection. You don't need to, go to the next city or town to find a bank. Lack of documentation, that is not like technical documentation, that is like government IDs. We don't really care about that problem in Bitcoin either. And then educational barriers. So that's financial literacy and also how to use Bitcoin specific education. And there's some really awesome people and projects working on those things. But cost is number one, right? Then I was at the Oslo Freedom Forum, heard a ton about use cases for in countries where the government is oppressive, or let's say you live in Africa, we have 40 plus different currencies across 50 countries, and there's just nothing's interoperable. Some of them are just highly inflating, and that's a place where Bitcoin can really bring stability and, let's say, interoperability across countries. You have the Anti-Corruption Foundation that collects donations in Bitcoin. So those are some really real use cases. That's not trading pics or, I mean, wealth building. It's awesome if people in the West, richer countries, can build more wealth. It's awesome. But if we really want to make a difference, these are things that's really meaningful. So and I guess now we can think about, well, we know who these people are, what their situations and what their needs are, what technological solutions do we need to build to specifically address their problems. So that's a big thing, right? What do we do? What do we take away from all of this? Nothing points to super clear solutions, but I think it has to be expected. Bitcoin is a global technology. Finance, money works super differently for tons of people around the world. So it's just not going to be one size fits all. I think we just have to expect that. And then as the technology matures, as we learn more, as it evolves, the solutions will also change. And the vision is that Bitcoin gets ingrained more in society, and as that happens, also the possibilities, the technical possibilities, the social support, all this stuff should also change. So it's a moving target, is basically my point. But if we don't want to look into the far future, if you just want to look right now, we have Bitcoin Network. We're cool with that one. Lightning Network, everyone's on board, although there's a lot of criticism right now. Everyone expected it to be solve all problems, but the channel open-close fees are problematic. Then eCash has also found more acceptance now in Bitcoin as a custodial solutions for super low payments and smaller communities, I would say. Then we have things like Ark and Friends that build on top of the lifting UTXOs out and then building almost like eCash-like systems on top of Bitcoin. They also have their own problems with cost of unilateral exit, liquidity, and all that. And that's a bit more in the future. Like eCash, you can kind of use it now. Ark and Friends, you can't really. Then we have basically more blockchains. Same type of construct as Bitcoin with some variations of them. You bridge over and then it's almost everything's the same, something slightly different, and you have roll-ups and other things. And some of them seem more out into the future. Can't really use them today. And then, everything that we don't address with these open system, that's going to be taken over by exchanges, ETFs, banks, governments, all of these things. And ideally, we want these open protocols, open systems to do as much as possible, permissionless, private, all this stuff. Okay, so at some point we have to kind of figure out what we want to focus on, create a framework, and for this example here, I just said, well, let's pick eCash, Lightning, Bitcoin. You have wallets that implement all three of them next to each other. For example, Mutiny wallet, maybe you start with super low amounts in eCash. At some point you have a bit more, you move over to the Lightning channel, and then you accumulate more sats, and then you get your own UTXO at some point. So these kind of work well together in a way. So Bitcoin, you have the base layer, and that's the block at the bottom. Then you have people, they interact with the network, the blockchain. For Lightning, you lift the sats out in multi-sigs, and then you kind of send things back next to between each other. And then let's say we add eCash on top. That eCash is another different mechanism. I think that's kind of one thing that I like about it, is that there are 3 different systems with very different properties and architectures, I think, and they can kind of complement each other. So here the blue stuff is exchanges. The square ones are mints. So someone can participate, like the circle here. That one, it's a person. They don't even need to touch the base chain. They just interact with mints. Maybe at some point they go on the base chain, but they don't have to. It's an easy entry point. Then there are people who have their own channels and they connect with mints. Maybe they even help route through mints. Here's someone who only interacts with one mint here. And this person here maybe also has like a stable channel here with another person or with another mint, or the mint offers, stable USD has a deal with an exchange or something. Right? The point of this diagram is not to be super specific, but it's to show how these systems kind of complement each other. And you could do the same thing. Let's say you don't use eCash here, you use Arc, or you use some sidechain, or you use Liquid, or maybe you can add Liquid on top. Like you can come up with other ones. But the important thing is then now that you have an understanding or a perspective on what you want to look at, then you can think more specifically about how that applies in different use cases. So here's basic idea that I already mentioned here. As your amounts increase, fees are increase, and you're more okay paying those fees because your amounts are higher. Your required security increases because there are more meaningful amounts. But then on the other hand, you need to trust more and more, right? And especially eCash, it's custodial. With Cashew, one person runs a mint, one entity. With Fedi Mint, it's a group of different people. Yeah, so that kind of goes in the opposite direction. And then we have those unique properties. You need wallets everywhere, right? But then you have these very unique objects that you deal with in each network, the UTXOs with their own unique properties, channels, you have liquidity, you have open-close fees, you can send unlimited transactions back and forth, you have fees. And in the eCash, you have eCash tokens, which also have their unique properties, like there's no account system, mints only know the tokens, they don't know who, they don't have an idea of a person or an account. They have privacy, but also, of course, mint shuts down. It's all worthless. And then you have the kind of the infrastructure, which is the mints, nodes, LSPs, nodes, miners. Those are basically the service provider that make all this stuff work. And so ideally, we can design all of this software, not just the wallets, but all the other intermediate points also to be just super incredible and appropriate. So like I mentioned, Mutiny Wallet has all 3 of these networks integrated, and I saw that at Oslo Freedom Forum, where BTC Sessions and Nida Posh did a Bitcoin 101 workshop, and they onboarded people to eCash because there's no fee involved. You can just send people some sats. They of course did all the important disclaimers, gave basic ideas of how things work. But I mean, that if that's kind of the reality, and I came up with a goofy name here, of the Global South educator use case, this is technology that works right now, right? The other thing that I heard from was, this is more specifically towards Lightning. I asked someone from Africa, and I'm sorry I'm forgotten his name right now, well, how do you see Lightning work out in Africa? And he said, well, the employers will be the economic hubs. So an employer has 10 employees every month. First month, let's say they want to pay them, they batch open 10 Lightning channels to these employees. Throughout the month, those employees spend through those channels, and then at the end of the month, the employer then fills them up again. Maybe does a splice here and there, or whatnot, opens a new channel. But that way, the fees there's a batching happening that creates efficiencies that then make Lightning work for people. So now you can think about that use case, and that means, well, you need to build payroll software, and you need to educate employers and employees who want to use Bitcoin in the businesses on how to set that up and how to use this, right? And then you need to test it, of course. So for each of those things that you look at, if you want to give your kid allowance, or if you're an activist community leader in an oppressive regime and you need like private donations and pay people, if you're an online merchant, all these things, then you can take a technical framework that you've laid out and you can figure out what the people need in terms of the actual software that they need, the user flows that they have, then the economic viability, and then how to make it all happen. So, this is like the final slide here. So, like I said, I started this by simply like 6 months ago or so, whatever, just by trying to figure out what scaling actually means, and then I gathered all kinds of different informations, because I contribute to various projects. I want to put my energy into things that people end up using, that really make a difference. I don't want to build more bicycle bears. And also, as part of the Bitcoin Design Foundation, we need to fund things, and ideally also you kind of need to have a perspective when you do both fundraising and when you then give out grants and discuss projects with grantees. So that's kind of my personal reason for thinking about all this stuff. But this is still very open here, right? It's a global system. Technology is evolving. People are learning. But I do hope if we have more conversations, if we can gather more intel, if we learn more about the use cases people actually need, and we think about things in really practical terms, that we can end up with some really awesome software and tools that beautifully solves people's problems around the world. I would love to hear more on all of these ideas. If you have feedback, let me know.